Hey everybody, it's Dr. Ayanna from drayannaskm.com and Inga from ingakeepitmoving.com. And we are so excited today because we have a special guest, Dr. Aisha Mays.
Hey.
Okay, so Aisha is our sister friend from Clark Atlanta University. You know how much we love our alma mater.
Yes.
And, so I am really super excited that the first guest that we have is someone from Clark Atlanta, and we'll get into a little bit of that a little bit later. But I want to read Dr. Mays's bio because she's pretty dope, and I want you all to understand how powerful this woman is and what she's bringing to the table today on part 2 of vision. And today what we're talking about is implementing or manifesting the vision. As you remember the last time we talked about how do we develop our vision and how we differentiate that between dreams and vision. And today we're going to talk about how to implement that. And so that's why Dr. Aisha is with us, because she has done some amazing work in implementing her own vision for medicine. So let me just try to read this whole thing. And listen, we just finished talking about our life with glasses when your eyeballs start changing after on. So, okay. So Bay Area native Dr. Aisha Mays is a family physician who focuses on adolescent medicine. Dr. Mays has worked with Oakland youth for over 10 years and has special clinical teaching and research experience on youth affected by sex trafficking. She is director of adolescent and school-based programs at Roots Community Health Center. In 2017, Dr. Mays founded the Dream Youth Clinic, a youth-led, youth-engaged, and youth-empowered space whose mission is to serve the most vulnerable youth of Oakland, including youth affected by homelessness, the juvenile justice system, the foster care system, and sex trafficking. The motto of Dream is health is everything, where they provide medical care differently by infusing creativity in the form of visual art, music, and media into clinical programming. Dr. Mays believes that passion, creativity, critical inquiry, and building communities are keys to dismantling negative paradigms and constructing a new vision for the future of healthcare. Everyone, please join us in welcoming Dr. Aisha Mays.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here. My CAU sisters, loving it.
Yeah. Okay.
So we're going to dive in because this dope Black woman, we really want to know about the beginnings, from the infant stage. You must, like where you started, where you grew up. Let's talk about little Aisha.
Love it. Little Aisha. Come here, little girl. Yeah, well, it's funny because I feel I'm definitely from the Bay Area and feel like an Oakland girl to the heart, but I actually was born in Missouri. So we moved to Oakland when I was 13, and I was born in Missouri. We lived in Kansas City. A lot of my family lives in Kansas City now. I come from a really big family. My mother is the youngest of 7. So I had 6 aunts and uncles, and all of my aunts and uncles had 3 to 4 children. So I have 20 something cousins, and a lot of us were there in Kansas City. So I had a big family. It was always a really good time with family. And family was really kind of the heart and kind of epicenter of my world and growing up. And certainly while we were in Kansas City. And we moved to Oakland when I was 13. And, it's funny because people say, oh, that must have been a big transition. And it actually was very similar. Kansas City was a very steeped Black community. And we certainly lived in that. And then Oakland in the 80s was also, and still is to this day, really strong Black community. And I remember when we were moving here, I felt really scared as like a 12-year-old because the only thing I had seen about California was like the Crips and the Bloods on television.
Oh, wow.
So I didn't even know what was out. Colors, maybe I don't know what was out then. But I was thinking, oh my gosh, the gangs are gonna get us, and it was
right.
It's kind of also reminds you of kind of the power of the media. especially back then, I had no perspective around anything outside of Kansas City, Missouri, aside from what we saw on television. So I think about that in terms of how Black folks are, were portrayed and are portrayed. And, but anyway, so that was Kansas City. And then we moved to Oakland, and being in California just really kind of opened up my world. Not only was it a strong Black community, but also being around other folks and other cultures. And I hadn't really had that experience, but more than that was sort of the perspective on life. And because people were around folks who didn't live or think the same way that they did, and it was a very rich experience to have grown up that way, thinking about different perspectives and different ways of life and different religion and spiritual practices, and something I always wanted to take with me. And then I remember in high school, we moved to what we call the South Bay, which is kind of Silicon Valley area. So you think about kind of Facebook. There's my husband in the background.
Listen, we keep it moving.
In real life, okay?
Real life. The
Right.
last episode, my contractor was walking through my house and signaling me to ask me for stuff. And I was like, bruh, come on, just ask me. I keep it moving.
Right, this is IRL, all right? And but moving to Silicon Valley, where now we're like Facebook and Apple and those things are, even though they were not there then, it was like old school Silicon Valley. That was a huge culture shock. Mainly moving into a white community, going to a predominantly white school. My school was still very multicultural, but it was where Black and brown folks were very marginalized, and we're very much kind of placed on the fringes of the school. And I just never had experienced that before. I'd never been in a space where people didn't think Black people were smart just because they were Black. That was completely foreign to me. I had gone to Black schools, grew up in Black community, I've come from an educated Black family. I just had no concept that folks really, thought that. Until having that experience in high school. And that is what really propelled me to go to Black college. I mean, I come from a long line of folks who've gone to Black colleges. All my cousins, my aunts, my mom, everybody went to Black colleges. But really that experience in high school, I was like, oh no, I'm going as far away from this feeling kind of paradigm that I can. And going to school in the AUC and at Clark was just an amazing experience. Yeah. And one that has shaped my life. I'm sure you all can agree with that and understand that, but really has shaped how I even approach my life from going to Black college.
So from that experience of projecting forward, what do you do now? So tell the audience what is your career now?
Yes, I'm a family doctor. I focus only on adolescent medicine, and I take care of young people all day, every day. So I take care of youth and adolescents, ages 12 to 25. That's kind of like my wheelhouse. I have worked with young people in Oakland for over a decade, and really working with some of the most vulnerable youth in the city. I used to be the medical director at the juvenile hall, and that was an amazing experience because I also never really thought about how young people receive medical care in juvenile hall, but also just kind of all the interworkings of juvenile hall and how, some kids get picked up for, shoplifting at Target and other kids don't, and how kids are profiled when they sit at the bus stops and they end up in juvenile hall for not doing anything. So just kind of, again, thinking about that. In 2017, I was approached by the folks in the homeless shelters in Oakland. And I say approach, but really I've had strong relationships with all the kind of agencies that work with kids who are vulnerable. When I started working in juvenile hall, I really started to learn about young people who were in these really compromising relationships and doing things as their role in these compromising relationships, mainly having transactional sex with other people for boyfriends or for their friend or for somebody who's going to help them out or a place to stay, and started to learn about sex trafficking. And that really is trafficking.
What is he doing? What is he in there doing?
Hey, babe. You can't wash dishes right now because we can hear all that in the background.
Is he trying to kill something?
They're like, what is he in there doing?
Sorry.
No, sorry, baby. He's back upstairs.
Yeah, appreciate you.
It's nap time. He's like, I'm gonna wash the dishes right now.
It seems like a good time.
Right. Even though there was a whole prep conversation that happened, like, okay, so there's gonna be a lot, you can't really be doing this or doing that. He said, okay, well, I'll just do the dishes.
I love it. I love it.
I love that you said that. I love that you said something as opposed to like, because I heard it. I was like, I wonder if they can hear that.
Listen, if I can hear it, they can hear it.
Right.
Okay.
So back on that.
Right.
So yes, I started learning a lot about sex trafficking and working with all the different agencies that were also supporting young folks around trafficking. And also just noticed a huge gap in that we weren't talking about this in the medical spaces. Doctors and nurses, we weren't really talking about how to support young people, although we were seeing them and sometimes didn't know we were seeing them or didn't know what the code words for around my boyfriend or I'm doing this for our relationship. Right. And so I really got involved with a lot of those community-based agencies that are working with young folks who are being trafficked, but specifically to kind of focus on the medical piece and how do we train providers and how do we also support young people in our spaces. So through that, through those relationships, I started really being in close contact with people in the shelter system. And we have 2 youth shelters in Oakland. And about 5 years ago, they reached out to me and said that they were going to be acquiring a new space, a new shelter. They were going to be renovating the space and they wanted to put a clinic in the space. And would I be willing to provide the medical services? And I was doing something else. And I think I was working in school-based health. And I was like, okay, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I had no idea how that would happen, but I was like, yes, absolutely. Yes, I'll do it. And we'll figure it out. And it took 4 years to renovate the space.
Wow.
And so in 2017, the shelter came back to me and said, hey, the space is done. Will you provide the medical services?
Wow.
And at that time I was doing something completely different. And I was like, yes, absolutely. And again, I had no plan. I had no idea how to do it, but I knew that like, this was my passion. This is what I wanted to do. And I was going to work it out. We were going to figure this out. I didn't think I would be a private practice physician. I was like, I know that this is what I'm supposed to be doing. So we're going to figure this out. And I ended up connecting with a friend and mentor of mine. She's been a really strong mentor since I've been back in the Bay Area post-residency, who is the CEO of Roots Community Health Center. And I reached out to her and was like, hey, I have this opportunity in front of me and I really want to take it, but I'm not really sure how to do it. And is this something, can you help me? Can we maybe talk about it? So she first kind of started just kind of consulting me about, if I want to go out on my own and start this clinic. And she's like, well, and we can talk about how we can support you. We're happy to be your fiscal sponsor, whatever you need. So as I started to think more about it, just where I was in my life, I was like, I'm not really sure that I'm ready to like kind of take the leap and open up my own brick and mortar, but maybe we can partner and have a partnership. And I can really open up and build this practice out under Roots. And so that's what we decided to do. We decided to partner, and that's how Dream was born, the first Dream Youth Clinic. And the other thing I'll say about Dream is that when we opened the space, we actually didn't have a name because I really wanted our space to be completely youth-led, youth-engaged. I wanted young people to know that this is their space. We were already within the wellness center of the shelter. So that's something I really believe in. And youth spaces should be in where young people are already existing and living, and not, us as adults. We're like, oh, I really like this really cute building on the corner of so-and-so and so-and-so. I'm going to build a clinic there and have kids come. But really it should be a space that young people already feel comfortable. And so that was something we were already able to do because we were in the wellness center of the shelter. But I also want them to name the space. Like, this is your space. So we actually didn't have a name for the first month, and we held a naming contest. So the young people would submit the names. We had like these ballot boxes around the wellness center and in the shelter, and they would submit names to what they wanted to call the clinic. And at the end of the month, we pulled out all the names out of the ballot box, and the youth actually voted on the names that were in the ballots, and they voted on Dream Youth Clinic, which is what one of the young people submitted. So it really is from the youth.
I'm listening to you talking, we have been friends for a lot of years now. So I'm not going to give all the details, although Aisha likes to talk about this because she thinks it's funny. I don't even remember like this, but I'm just going to say that Aisha and I began to know each other because I was her resident assistant.
Yes.
College. I was only a year ahead of her, right? But because I was like definitely a mothering, nurturing type, they kept me in the freshman dorms my entire time of doing it because I was definitely one of those people who was like, where you going? Like
she was resident mama. Mm-hmm. Yes.
And according to Aisha, she said she was going somewhere and she had on, I don't know, like a mini skirt or whatever. I don't know what it was because I wore short skirts, but
it was like a micro jumpsuit. It was okay. It was the shortest jumpsuit ever.
Okay, so there you go. And I was like, where are you going? And she was like, I'm going out. And I was like, whatever, according to her. But from that grew like, and it is not even like we really hung out that much in college, right. And it really was after like my senior year in college. I went to Boston to do this research program at Harvard. She was also at Harvard doing research, and we like just had a blast.
It was the best summer. It was the best summer.
The best summer, right? Just hanging out with so many people from the AUC, from the Atlanta University Center, Morehouse. I think I don't know if it was anybody there from Spelman, but Morehouse and Clark Atlanta, and just and people who were locally there from Boston just had an amazing time. So we've just over the years have just developed this sisterhood. And as you were talking about like just this process, the thing that stood out for me is just remembering this journey that you went through to get here. Like Aisha has such a free spirit. Dr. Aisha has such a free spirit. And sometimes I would talk to her and she was like, I think I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. And I'm going to I was always like, okay, that sounds right. Yeah, that sounds right for you, Aisha, whatever. And it was because I always knew like she was an uncaged bird, right? Yeah. And so whatever like rested in her spirit and she could kind of grab onto, I knew that she would be able to form something out of that. And it is very interesting because this morning, as I was sitting in my meditation practice, I was reading something about detachments from outcome, and how if you can be detached from outcome, you can still set goals for yourself and have dreams for yourself. But if you are allowing yourself to be somewhat detached from the outcome, that actually opens you up to so much possibility.
Yeah.
Because you're not wedded to a particular outcome, which is sort of interesting, right? Because, both of us are in medicine. You have to have such tunnel vision to get to medical school, through residency. But at some point you have to kind of like detach so that you can actually like slide a little deeper into what your real purpose is.
Yeah.
So like listening to you talking, I'll be like, that's my girl. Like it's just so exciting to see how you just evolved into this such a powerful person. And then the other thing I was thinking about was when you were just talking about the sex trafficking, and it made me think about how vulnerable young people are, but also how vulnerable girls and young women are. Even within our communities, in ways that we really don't talk about. It's sort of like one of those things that we kind of sweep under the rug, And I know there's been a lot more work, recently with Me Too and Tarana Burks and, people like that who have really kind of shone a light on that. But I just remember my internship year in OBGYN and working in a youth clinic, and my attending was this, African-American male OBGYN. And you know, Aisha, like when we're interviewing people during that process, we're supposed to ask about if they're safe, if they have domestic
Mhm.
situations that are unsafe for them, what is like the onset of their menses, what's the onset of their first encounter sexually, you know, those
Mhm.
things. And so me trying to be a diligent resident, intern, asking these questions, these very pointed questions about that. And what I realized was that so many girls were having inappropriate experiences
Yep.
at a really young age. And it made me think about myself as a young girl, not understanding that when I was walking from my neighborhood at 49th and Hoops to the L at 46 and Market so I could get to my private school that was, over an hour, some odd minutes from my home in West Philly, that when men, adults, were laying on their horns as I'm
Yes.
walking down the street, or pulling their cars aside and trying to proposition me, or offering me money, or or me saying like, so just so you know, I'm 15.
Right, exactly. I'm
Because I had the
13.
sense to say that, like, I'm
Mhm.
15. And
Mhm.
they would say, well, I'm 37, or I'm
Mhm.
whatever. And if you don't care, I don't care. It wasn't until I was in high school, I had an experience where there was a man on the same bus that I took to school, started propositioning me on the bus, and he was about 20 years my senior. Um, and he would always try to talk to me and engage me. And I was in a newspaper because I was taking Japanese for a language. And that was like not a common thing. It was me and a few other students in my school who were taking Japanese as a language, and they featured us in this article. And so he saw the article, and so then he called my school and identified himself as my uncle, and left a number for me to call him back. And because I went to a small private school, they called my mother saying, "Don't nobody calls here for Ayanna. Something's not right about this," right? Call my mother, tell her what happened. I get home that evening, and I was a latchkey kid, so I was always home before her, but this particular day I got home after her. And she's like, "Who is blah blah blah?" I was like, "What are you talking about?" And finally I figured out, I said, "Oh, that must be the guy on the bus." And she's like, "What guy on the bus?" I was like, "Well, I mean, for the last 2 years, this guy has been trying to pick me up on the bus. 2 years, y'all." Like, and she said, "Well, why didn't you say anything about it?" And this is the point I'm trying to make. And I said, "Mommy, this happens to me
All
every
the time.
If I
Exactly.
told you this
Right.
every day," I said, "First of all, what are you gonna do about
Mhm.
it? What are you gonna do about it? And second of all, if I told you this with who was trying to pick me up on the street every day, we would be having this conversation, ad nauseum. So
Right.
but it didn't occur to me that it was unsafe, that I was actually in danger. Like,
Mhm.
other things had to happen afterwards, but I was actually in danger, and I didn't understand that I was being stalked,
And
because
it's predatory.
and it was
Right.
predatory, and
Mhm.
I didn't get it because it was such a part of my young adolescent life at that point as a young girl.
Yeah.
So I just love what you're doing, because it's time for us to have those conversations about what happens to young girls and women. So with that said, with the heaviness and the responsibility of what you're doing, how do you take care of self? Like, how do you find that time to like come back to self and really practice committed self-care so that you can continue to do the work that you do?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love this question, and I often am asked this question, especially when I talk about the work that I do with young folks who are being trafficked. And I will say, I think that the first thing is I feel so passionate and inspired by the youth that I work with every day. It is like it fills me. So there are days I come back from clinic and I am like so tired, but I am so tired, but I'm also so full at the same time. Just being able to be in relationship with them and to also witness the strength that they exhibit to show up every day, to show up for their children. I take care of a lot of young people who have children, a lot of young folks who are in and out of these compromised trafficking relationships, and some of them they are aware of, and they are trying to work through it, and they are still showing up in the best way that they know how. And that is just so inspiring to me. I'm like, if you can show up with all the stuff that you have stacked against you, and also being young, also being in a stage of development where you have not even reached the full sort of cerebral maturity to know how to get through things. So you talk about, Dr. Ayanna, you were just talking about like realizing that when you're older, but these are young people who are in it and you're still showing up. That's just like top for me. So that makes me feel really full. And it also takes a lot of engagement to do the work. It takes a lot of engagement to work with young people, number one. It takes even more engagement to work with youth who are so vulnerable and who really just need you, who just need a lot of supportive connection. And so I do really feel the need to refill and replenish myself every single day. So I probably just a couple of years ago, I think maybe for the past 2 years or so, I have had a really consistent centering practice, what I call it, centering practice that now starts with like a morning meditation. And my morning meditation will be just just some time of centering. So usually I will like either sit on my yoga mat or sit on a blanket and light a candle. Usually have some crystals and either some sweetgrass or something. I'll be sort of burning some sage, and just take a minute just to be quiet and to center. And I will either think about what I want the day to be like, or what or sort of what I want to focus on in my being. So I've been thinking a lot about just sort of ease and calm lately. This year has been so intense for so many reasons, and I just want to move with just calm, throughout the day. And so I usually will kind of center on a word or a concept that I want to sort of either focus on throughout that day, or that I am focusing on in this time period. Okay. And I really try and do that every single morning. And I notice the mornings that I'm not able to, because I have focused on something else, that, my day is off. My day is really thrown off. I just don't feel grounded. I need that for grounding. In addition, for many years, I've actually had a yoga practice for years. That started probably in med school and really became stronger in residency. And I was listening to, maybe it was the last podcast, I think, Inga, you were talking about your yoga practice.
Yes.
And, and that really resonated with me, like just the need for, and how the breath and movement really can get you into a zone. It really gets me into a zone where I'm just like, I feel, this sort of peaceful zone. I'm not even really thinking about anything else. And it's not even that I'm thinking about focusing on the poses, but it just puts you in a different place. And so that yoga practice is actually what opened up my meditation practice. Mm-hmm. I don't think I would have done it the opposite. I think I may even have tried to do it in the converse, but I wasn't really ready for like a stillness meditation practice. It's really yoga that really got me to a more stillness meditation practice. And that feels really good. And the other thing I will say is just also sort of the energy that's around me, just being really mindful of the energy in my life. And, and one of the beautiful things about being grown is that we can decide, right? The people that we have in our lives and the energy around us, right? It's like, you know what? This is not working for me. So I cannot be around you, right? And And that is, I cannot underscore that enough, and like how that has really helped in my own kind of centering in my life is like really being mindful and particular around the energy I keep around me.
Right.
Yeah.
It was one thing when you were talking, because I know we're talking about today implementing vision. Can you take yourself back to the place where you knew this was something that you really wanted to do? Like, did you see the Dream Youth Clinic when you had a vision of it a long time ago, or is it different than what you originally visualized?
Yeah, it's so funny when Ayanna was talking about her memories of me and our friendship, and me always having all these different ideas about what I wanted to do, and I'm like, oh, I didn't realize I was all. I mean, I knew I was always that way, but I don't think I really knew that I was projecting it as much as I was, or talking about it. So that was funny to hear and kind of nice to hear. But I think as I think about that. I mean, I've known I wanted to be a doctor like my whole life. I mean, as early as my first memories of what I wanted to do, it was always like, I want to be a doctor. But as the concept of that, like the dream of that. And I knew that was going to happen. How that was what that looked like in the future, I didn't really think about so much. But the other thing I always really loved, and I don't know that I necessarily consciously noticed this growing up, but I also was a person who just loved experiences. I just always like to try things like, oh, I'm interested in that. I want to do that. I want to do that. I want to learn this language. I want to go to Mexico. I just because like, I just want to have different experiences in my life. And that is something that has been a part of me since being very young and to this day. And I think that's how people kind of see me. It's like, oh, Aisha's a person who just tried a lot of different things. And so when I'm thinking about medicine and working with young people, I really start to focus on kind of melding that passion of just like youth energy. And I think that's kind of like youth energy too. Right. Youth are just like, they're always into different things. I think that's going to be why I'm really drawn to young people. Yeah. And when I was a resident, I started having all these young folks coming into my panel, like my continuity clinic. As a family doctor, we take care of the life spectrum. And I just happened to have a lot of teenagers on my panel. And we just always had these really good discussions about like their clothes and hair and music and just things, outside of what people think is like health, even though that's health too. Right. And so during residency, I really started thinking about really working with youth and like how I could really turn this into like my career. And one of my mentors is when I was a resident was like, well, adolescent medicine is a field. And I'm like, oh, I didn't even know that, So that's what kind of really started focusing like, okay, well, maybe I'll do adolescent medicine. Right. And, but I didn't really think about like, maybe I'll have my own clinic, but I just knew I wanted to do adolescent medicine. And then as I started to have these experiences, in working in teen clinics and juvenile hall and school-based health centers, I've worked in so many different clinics around the Bay Area that work with youth. I would see how some of the spaces, some of our youth spaces were not really serving young people. Either we had too rigid of scheduling, like young people had to have appointments all the time, or if they were late, they weren't seen, or like we wouldn't play music, we only have like these white noisemakers, like just these like, I would see these like kind of different things. And it was not one particular clinic, but just like seeing these different barriers that just didn't feel like a youth space. So I always thought about, like it would just be great to be able to have a youth clinic that actually is a youth space. It really feels like youth energy. So that was just kind of like percolating in my mind. I never really thought about doing it myself. And until the shelter leadership approached me. And it was, and like literally like when they got the words out, like the next breath, it was like, yes, I'll do it. Absolutely. I was like, this is my opportunity. And to really be able to work with young people, work with the young people that we care for to create their space, to create their concept of health, to bring in their concept of health into this physical, actualized space. And so I just feel so honored and so lucky to be able to have built with young people a space that actually feels like a space for them. So like we have appointments, but that's only to kind of drop them into like our schedules. Kids know they can show up at any time. We're open from we're open from 9 to 5. If you come between 9 and 5, you'll be seen.
Wow.
You can drop in, you can make an appointment. You can, we actually don't really have a front desk. People come into like the office and they say they want to be seen and they talk to so it's like it's just a real kind of homey kind of flow. You know, our exam room has, we infused a lot of like art and creativity into the space. So our white noise makers in the space is a playlist. So we have a playlist that the kids, that they say they want to listen to this music, we add it to the playlist. My staff are all millennials and Gen Zers. So they like curate the playlist and there's just a lot of art in the space. One of the biggest walls of the clinic is actually a living mural. So we painted it with dry erase wall paint. So the whole wall is a dry erase wall, and there's markers, and so kids will tag the wall, they'll write like messages for other young people, they'll draw on it. We just really try and, keep it really fresh and feeling like them. And that's what I always envisioned. Like that was the vision. And it just really actualized in this brick and mortar space.
Wow. Yeah.
But I would imagine like even with all of the success that you have had, you've experienced some challenges and obstacles to making this dream a reality for yourself. And, as you remember, like our alma mater's motto is like, I'm going to find a way or I'll make one. And any of us who have gone to Clark Atlanta, we always talk about how that has really carried us
Yes.
through so many situations. And like, I'm going to find a way. I mean, I literally have said
Yes.
that in spaces that had not with other people there. And I would say, well, I'm going to find a way or I'm going to make a way, So how have you sort of implemented that into how you were able to manifest this dream for yourself, finding a way or making a way?
Yeah. I think I really underestimated so many of those like golden nuggets that we got at Clark, we were there until like life showed up. Yes. Cause I remember freshman week having to learn the motto and having to learn the song and do all the things for the coordination. And I'm like, okay, find a way or make one. Like, what kind of like motto is that?
Culture for service, right?
And culture for service.
That's what we do. Culture for service.
I know. I didn't even understand what
Even
that
now I'm
meant.
getting chills thinking about it.
I know. It's so true. I mean, I remember making jokes about it, And then I'm so glad you said that, Dr. Ayanna, because I remember maybe it was in med school when I pulled that find a way to make one motto. I mean, it just came out of the sky. Like I don't even know if I was studying or something. I was like, oh no, we're going to find a way to make one. And people were like, and I remember my friend be like, where'd you get that from? I'm like, oh, that was our school's motto. And she's like, your college's motto was find a way or make. And my husband says it too.
What?
Like, your college's motto was find a way. That's powerful.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, that is.
Yeah.
That is powerful.
Yeah.
And I mean, and so I
like,
yes. So I was grateful that I'm like so grateful that they made us like learn those mottos and say them over and over, because that again, another nugget that's instilled that strength in us that they knew we needed. Yeah. And we didn't know yet that they're like, it's coming. You're going to need this later.
Aisha, even like making us do community service as part of your freshman year experience.
Yes.
Were required to do community service, whether you carried that out through the rest of your time, but you understood the value of being in the community and giving back, and the fact that we were guests in that community.
Exactly. Yep.
And that we were not above anybody that lived in that community, that we were their guests, and some of these people fed us, like literally.
And watched us
next door.
And make sure safe walk.
And
the cafeteria lady be like, I saw you walking down the street on Ashby because I live there. Yes.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So like when you've had obstacles, like how did you implement that?
Yes, because it has not been easy. And I think we all can attest to that, just how life shows up. And I also will say as a as a physician, medicine can be so narrow. You know what I'm talking about, Ayanna. Medicine can be so narrow. I mean, your box is like 2 by 2, and they're like, either you're in this 2 by 2 box or you're out, completely out. Like there is no room for anything else. I mean, there can be so little room for nuance, for creativity, for questioning in a field that says that it's so like lauds questioning and research and new ideas and new paradigms. In practice, you're in that 2 by 2 box. So I just remember, being questioned so much going through med school, like, well, what are you doing? Or like doctors don't do that. Or like, you're going to be a doctor. Why are you talking about fashion? You're going to be a doctor. Why are you going over here? Or why are you taking a year off from medical school? Are you dropping out? And I feel really grateful to have gone to a medical school that was also pretty open. They weren't just in that 2 by 2 box of the field, but they also saw and valued that students were people, and they really wanted to bring that, all the creativity and all of our humanity goes into the practice of medicine. That's what makes you the good physician that you want to be. And they were really supportive of me taking a year off. And I didn't take a year off to get another degree. I didn't take a year off to get a master's or to do research. I just found out we could take a year off, and I was like, oh, I'm doing that. And I'm moving to New York.
Listen, as you're talking about all these things, I'm having these flashbacks of all these conversations. I'm like, Lord.
Are you dropping me out of medical school?
I'm just doing me.
Yeah. I was like, I'm just going to take a year off because we can, and I can come back. Okay, I'm going to move to New York because I always wanted to, and I'm just going to have fun for a while. But again, the what we are meant to do in our life always finds us. Yes. It always finds us. So even during my year off where I was meant to kick it, that's my plan, I ended up also going out to, I went to Columbia, and I went to go and see, because I literally got to New York and I was just like, I guess I should do something that's like somewhat related to medicine, so I don't look like I just like totally, wasted this year to the 2 by 2 box, And so I went to see the head of minority affairs at Columbia, because I was like, well, who can I talk to? I'm like, well, okay, I'm sure they have like a person there that can talk to students of color. And I went to go see this man, and I literally just showed up in his office. I mean, it was just like, I had no appointment. I literally just showed up. Like, I went to see if you had some time. Right. You're the director, but do you have time for me? And he was just like, okay. He's like, well, today's my last day, but I'm moving to Florida, but let me go introduce you to some people. They might have something for you. This man was so good to me. He introduced me to some folks. They were like, we think we're going to have a research position for working with Black women in Harlem around breast cancer. We need a research kind of program coordinator. Maybe you can do that. Leave us your resume. If we get the grant, we'll call you. And I was like, okay, left my resume. And I was like temping at a high school or something. And he called, like 6 weeks later, I get a phone call, and it's them. And they're like, we got the grant. Do you want the job? I mean, like, again, the things that you're supposed to do find you. It would be an amazing experience working in community with Black women around breast cancer in Harlem. It was amazing. And, but I will say along the way, I think that there have been challenges, and the main challenges are the questions that come at you. Like, are you supposed to be doing that? How can you do that? How are you trained to do that? Who says you know how to do that? Did you get a degree in that? So I think the main thing is like trusting that you're meant to do this. Remembering our ancestors, that there have been so many Black folks, so many Black women before us who have done this with so little resources and a minuscule of support. And if they can do it, we can do it. And remembering also your community, the folks who know you, and that you're meant to be here. So that that has always stuck with me. It has not been easy. I have had so many different positions. If you look at my resume, it is so long with so many jobs, but I was never looking for a job.
Right.
You know, I was always looking for my career and my passion, thing that I could create.
Yeah.
And so just believing in yourself and remembering that along the way.
And I think Inga had said at the last podcast, like, my much might not be your much, and not living by anybody else's boundaries or restrictions, right? Is that right, Inga? Like, we talked about, like, when people say, well, you can't do that. It's like, who can't do that? Like,
right.
What are you talking to?
Why not?
Right. You know, but also sort of like what we were talking about before, I think maybe the three of us were having the conversations when I was saying, like, this idea that we have to be this one thing.
Yeah.
Even in medicine, like, well, you're a doctor, so that's what you do, and you do it by the traditional model of being a physician. And that is, and you want to talk about a dream killer, like, there's that, but it's also like complete and utter nonsense. Like, our minds and our consciousness are so full, and the universe is so abundant, you know? And if we are really like focused in on what we came here to serve, how we came here to serve, and how we came here to help and like uplift the consciousness of the world, then how could it be defined by one thing?
Right.
Absurd.
Yeah. Yeah. And the most powerful concepts in medicine, the most powerful paradigms and shifts in medicine have been ones that have been intersectional and are coming from so many different ideas, bringing in the social sciences, bringing anthropology, bringing in history. It's not ever just one thing. Mm-hmm. And I feel like the most brilliant people in medicine are ones that know how to transcend and span across different communities, different concepts, and even the work that you're doing, that you all are doing. I mean, this is health, and that is what speaks to people. It's not about just I always talk to our kids about really health is everything. Mm-hmm. It's not about you just coming into the exam room and getting a physical with me or getting tested. That is like the last thing. Health is like how you got here, who you're kicking it with, who you're hanging out with, who you're talking to, what you're eating, how you feel about yourself, who you spend your time with. That is health.
Yeah.
The health is that being in the exam room is the last part of it.
Yeah. And that's the maintenance part. And quite frankly, like, if you understand health in that sort of like paradigm, appreciating like the spiritual portion, the mental portion, the physical portion, and how it's all intertwined, then you can also make that leap in understanding, like, when you maintain your health in a real and fundamental way, and you nurture that and you feed it, like, that is an act of revolution.
Yes.
Right.
It's an act of revolution, like that you can harness that to apply it to get in the bag, right? Because we're talking about entrepreneurship, right? Like, if you're in a healthy state of mind, body, and spirit, then you can take that and use that to apply to your entrepreneurship work, or your passion work, or your career work.
That's right. Yeah.
You were about to say something.
So Dr. Aisha, since now you have meshed medicine with entrepreneurship, what would be your, like, looking at your past experience, looking at the obstacles, the wins, the ebbs and the flows? We know business is up and down, especially as an entrepreneur. What would be the nugget that you would leave for the audience on entrepreneurship and navigating everything, life, household, work, the no's and the maybes, the questions that you speak about? What's your nugget?
Yeah, I think my nugget, I have a few nuggets. I think one is trust yourself, trust your gut, trust your gut. When I talk to my youth, I always tell them, trust your gut. What is your gut telling you about this experience? What is your gut telling you about this relationship? What is your gut telling you about this thing that you're supposed to do or not do? That is your truth. That is your truth. And your truth is different from someone else's truth. So you have to trust your gut. And I think that is so important in being an entrepreneur, trusting your gut about, is this the time to do this? Is this the way to do this? Is this the person I should be partnering with in order to do this? What is my gut telling me? Because you're going to get so many messages from the externally. There's so much noise externally. And if we are not sitting and centering and trusting that voice, then we will often be led sort of off of our path.
Yeah.
And we notice that when we go off of it, we're like, oh, my gut told me that I shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
Okay. The other thing I'll say is aligning yourself with people who you have similar vision and purpose with. And those are the aligning relationships are so important, especially when you are partnering, especially in entrepreneurial relationships. Aligning yourself with folks who you trust, and then, but also people who sort of move in a similar way that you do.
Right.
That, I feel like that has been so key for me, especially in medicine that can be so rigid. And it was so hard for me to find like folks in medicine who thought outside the box and who practiced and lived outside the box. I will say my partner and Dr. Abalada, Dr. Noha Abalada, who's the CEO of Roots, who we've partnered with, she is such a visionary entrepreneurial spirit, and can really see and think about, oh yeah, I can see how that can be done. And this is how we can do it. This, or what about this? Or what about, I'm like, that's who I need to be talking to. Yeah. Someone you can actually dream and vision with. And remembering you will get there will be a lot of naysayers around you. But as long as you're aligning yourself in deep partnership with people who move in visionary sort of spirit in the same way that you do, that will keep you, again, on your path and inspired and encouraged. You need a lot of encouragement along the entrepreneurial pathway. And so aligning yourself with folks who see things in the same way and can really partner and vision with you is so important.
Okay, so we're going to have to wrap up soon, but I just wanted to ask another question. So I know fundamentally, Aisha, you are a creative. So for me, like music, I think for a lot of us, music and the arts are so much a part of like what inspires us as we're doing whatever we're doing. You talked about like the use of playlists and music and art in the clinic as well. What music right now is putting gas in your tank?
Let's see what I am loving right now. I was listening to yesterday. So there's this artist out of the UK. She's Black British girl named Arlo Parks.
Okay.
And I'm totally loving her. She's kind of like folksy, alternative-y, chill. I always put on like her playlist on Spotify because it plays her music, but also like related music.
Yeah.
So I was listening to that yesterday, and that's usually like my go-to, like Saturday. I want to just be in like my creative mood. I'll put on Arlo Parks. And I also was listening to it. I actually just pulled out the album art because this is just like, we got this like killer record collection from Gregory's uncle.
Oh, cool.
And I have this Bill Withers. So Bill Withers is, this album is everything, okay?
Listen.
Okay, there's this song on here called Make a Smile for Me.
Yes.
It does everything for me.
Yeah.
Everything. Okay. I have been listening to this for probably a month, and like I will put this, and it's a record. I will put the record on repeat.
Yes.
That means I gotta get up and change the needle and move it back and play it again. But I'm in love with Bill Withers anyway. I've always loved him. But that record, that just took me to a whole nother place. So yes.
Oh gosh, girl, I go on about that. That record is, and when I think about, because we lost him this year, I think about that album. It's just so many gems on it. So yeah. Inga, what about you? What's putting gas in your tank, sis?
I'm still on that song Essence WizKid, because for some reason it's something about the beats and the music, and my oldest sent it to me, said, Mama, this is so you. So I can just sort of like, how you're getting ready and you just want to move around. You think you're like a stripper, but you're really not.
You get the moves.
Oh, like this Caribbean stripper is so crazy. So yeah, that music is everything. Yeah.
Okay. I have been on a pretty heavy hip hop kick right now. So like old stuff, new stuff. I don't know why I've gotten like back into Rod Digger. I love Rod Digger.
Oh.
You know, that new Busta Rhymes album is a masterpiece. I don't know if you've heard of it, if you've heard it yet, but that thing is so hard. I really like there's a new Sweet out by Mike Flo. It's called A Goon that I'm really digging right now. And then other like artists that are in the same vein of hip hop, like so Christian Scott, Atunde Ajua, who is improvisational music, what we call jazz. He's dope. Theo Christian Scott, Atunde Ajua. Initially, it was Christian Scott, and then he took on these other names. But there's one song that he wrote the first time the very first time he saw the woman who ended up becoming his wife, and it's called Isadora. Oh my God.
Oh.
You gotta go listen to it.
It's like it's taking you to a place.
Listen, honey, every time I listen to it,
Love those.
You know how something just touch you in a deep space?
Yeah.
It like touches me in a deep space. And then Theo Croker is another one. So those are people who are kind of like putting gas on my tank right now. I'm really excited.
I love it. I just got a whole list.
Yes, honey. So okay. So we're gonna wrap up. We covered a lot of ground today. This was an amazing conversation.
I love this conversation. It's so
oh my
good.
God.
You go to Oakland.
So much.
Oakland,
Yes.
We need to go to Oakland. Listen, I've been to Oakland.
We need to go now. Well, I guess after.
And you know what? And in real talk, like Oakland is such a powerful city for African Americans. So I'm just gonna stop there, but it's one of the cities that you definitely want to spend some time just absorbing some of that energy or what have you. But we're gonna kind of wrap up. But Inga, we have another topic for our next podcast. Can you kind of touch on that a little bit? Or you want me to talk about it?
Well, it's dealing with health as an asset. I want to say we're going to talk about mental, emotional, and physical health, because a lot of people like to focus on what some people call the easiest, which is the physical.
Yes.
But we need to also talk about the mental and the emotional health. Like it's just a lot of stuff going on. I think everything needs to be stretched, exercised, and massaged.
I heard that last time. I was heard the massage.
No, listen.
Touch your mind.
I can see it in her face. I'm looking like, Lord, here it comes. I thought we were and I can see it like your whole face like morphed like that. Those what do you call it? Now I'm losing it. What's the Yoruba goddess? Aisha.
What is it? Oshun?
Oshun, yes. All that Oshun.
Well, I love that it showed up, because I would have felt bad if it hadn't shown up when I was on Inga, because it has shown up on the other two podcasts. I'm like, wait a minute, why did Inga talk about the massaging when I was on?
I dial it back because I really wanted to talk about it, and I was like,
and you got on shoe colors, just so you know.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do.
I'm a shoe,
Yes. You went too much. Okay, so cool. Aisha, Dr. Aisha, can you tell everybody where they can find you on social media, your website, whatever?
Yes, so you can follow me on Twitter at Dr. Aisha Mays, on Instagram at Akili98, that's AKILI 98, or you can just search my name, it'll come up. If you want to look at our clinic, and I feel like we have a really good clinic Instagram. It's Dream Youth Clinic on Instagram. We're always posting really fun stuff. Our youth are doing some amazing stuff. They're about to make some videos, some really cool things. Cool. Or LinkedIn, Aisha Mays, if you want to chat.
Cool. Inga.
And for me, you can find me on my website at keepit-moving.com or Keep It Moving on IG. You can also find me by my name on LinkedIn.
Cool. And you can find me also on LinkedIn, Dr. Ayanna S. Kersey McMullen, my full government name, or on IG, Dr. Ayanna SKM, or my website, drayannaskm.com. That's Dr. DRAYANNA, S as in Sam, K as in kangaroo, M as in Mary.com. Listen, people get confused.
All of it. Mm-hmm.
All of that.
Okay. So, all right, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in for this wonderful, powerful conversation today.
So
and we are looking forward to seeing you next time. And as always, we hope that you are well, that you remain well, and continue to be in this vibe of entrepreneurship, sisterhood or brotherhood, and interdependence so that you can go out and get that abundance, y'all. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.